Hi everyone.
Hello. We're on page 242 of In Search of Christian Freedom under the chapter heading Legalism, Opponent of Christian Freedom. Ray is again contrasting grace, the law of Christ, with the law of Moses, but also with this new theocratic law code and the phrases that you might remember from the previous segments that are pretty scary if you're thinking of law being now transformed by grace. Well, these phrases don't fit, do they? Under a new legal arrangement of control, a body of rules for Christian conduct, and enforceable, that is, a body of rules that is enforceable on Christians. So how is this the age of grace if you're a Jehovah's Witness? Well, he goes on page 242. In 1976, the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses decided to make a revision of its manual called Aid to Answering Branch Office Correspondence. The manual serves to direct all branch committees of the organization in their handling of problems. The purpose of the revision was so that the manual would contain the more recent decisions of the governing body. Staff members Gene Smalley and Robert Wallen were assigned to draft an updated manual, and they submitted their proposed revision in September 1977, the work having been done primarily by Smalley. The writing committee assigned me to do the final editing of the material. I found the assignment a depressing one. Though familiar with the original manual from past experience, I now felt the full force of the extent to which a legalistic outlook had come to dominate the organization's approach to Christianity. 2 years later, I still had not completed the editing, and in fact had made very little progress. I offered to turn over the assignment to someone else, but Lyman Swingle, who was then the coordinator of the writing committee, said he personally was in no hurry to see the material finished, that as far as he was concerned, quote, the longer it was left on the back burner, the better, unquote. Then he asks, as Ray does, to consider the index of the 114 pages of the proposed material. And the next 3 pages of In Search of Christian Freedom is devoted to that index. And I'll just pick out some of the highlights of this list of some 174 different subjects. Abortion, apostasy, birth control, birthday, blood guilt, confession, divorce, flag salute and flag display, hermaphrodite. I thought that stood out. Hermaphrodite, but that bears upon the debates of today as to gender. And then on the next page, he has among the words that are listed alphabetically are neutrality, pants, and then comma women. So women in pants is apparently dealt with also in the policy book.
When wearing a pantsuit was a definite no-no.
Porneia, well, that one Ray underlines. Porneia, lots of stuff about porneia in here. And that goes to the next part, which is sex change, sex relations, sexual conduct. And right after that, I thought this was curious too. Showers. Showers. Okay.
I wonder what that's about.
Then tobacco, that gets 3 whole pages. Transplanting organs, transsexual, and transvestism. So covering all aspects of what you would consider in those days at least normal life, and a lot of other stuff too.
Yeah, up to date. Okay, so Ray continues. Virtually every area of life, family and marital affairs, employment, social and communal relationship or community relationship is covered by one or another of the policies contained in this publication. But the 174 headings listed in the index gives only a surface view of the reality found in the pages, a small idea of just how extensive and complex the organizational policies had become. And even the manual's pages tell only a portion of the story, for they contain abundant references to the Watchtower articles, which spell out in even greater detail the technicalities of the policies developed. The proliferation of rulings and sub-rulings found in its pages, some directly enforceable, and others only subtly so, can only be described as Talmudic, which he's talking about the traditions of the Talmud from the Jewish belief and review of the law.
Rabbinic Judaism, we would call it today, right?
Okay.
With its list of rules.
And every year that passes sees new rulings formulated as a result of governing body sessions.
Though the revised manual was to be called Correspondence Guidelines, any person who occupies the position of congregational elder, traveling overseer, or branch committee member knows that the manual's contents form no mere guide, but have the force of law. He knows that if he does not adhere closely to these policies and decisions in his handling of matters, he will be subjected to discipline. These policies are, in fact, treated with the same respect as if they were direct statements from Scripture, divine law. Witnesses are taught to view them in this way. As far back as the Watchtower of May 15, 1944, page 152, we find this statement.
Quote, "It must always be kept in mind that God's organization of his people is theocratic, not democratic. The laws of his organization come from himself, the great theocrat, Jehovah, the Supreme One. Quaintly put, a theocratic organization is ruled from the top down, which means from the Most High God downward, and not from the bottom up, that is, from the people of the congregation upward. It is quite evident that what is called the great body of theocratic law, found today within the witness organization, did not originate with the people of the congregation, those at the so-called bottom. The top, from which this body of law emanated, however, was in reality no higher than the leadership of the witness community, its actual controlling authority." Yeah, that's certainly an imagination to think that it's coming directly from God.
When you look at the history of the Watchtower over 140 years and how many changes, hundreds of changes literally, in policy and in theology, you realize, how does this new light idea combine or become compatible with the idea of theocratic organization ruled top down by God?
Yeah. If God is at the top, you can't change anything.
If this stuff, this light, is actually coming from God, how does that fit, or how is that compatible with how we view Scripture, let's say, where in Scripture you're taught to believe as a witness that the Bible is infallible, and that's because the writers are inspired. They can't make mistakes, so God actually overrules their limited light or their errors that they would have in their own thinking. He overrules all of that for the sake of his own revelation and his own credibility, his own name's sake.
But he doesn't do that in the organization.
No, he doesn't. So how does this model of the pyramid structure again, where God somehow uses all of those elements under him to reveal light to the people at the bottom, this model of theocracy that's in your head, how does that work in practice? And obviously in the Watchtower it doesn't work that way. These are the rules of men, and that's why they need to have these controls. That's why the legalism that became evident well after the days of Russell, as he'll deal with in the next segment. Russell was not legalistic most of the time, and he was very liberal, as befits a small organization breaking away from the controls of Christendom
That they criticize.
There was a liberal spirit to Russell's day, but that soon evaporated in the days of Rutherford, and it got much worse after Rutherford's death. So as he points out in the next segment, the theocratic law concepts really started into the 50s after the invention of the doctrine of disfellowshipping. Legalism's subtle invasion in the next segment.